Most people wake up tired, not physically tired, but mentally drained. They hit the alarm, reach for their phone, scroll through other people's lives, and then rush into a day they don't control. They work hard, they stay late, they sacrifice weekends. They tell themselves, one day this will pay off. But deep down, there's a quiet fear they don't say out loud. What if it doesn't? What if all this effort, all this exhaustion, all this time isn't actually leading anywhere? That is the question most people spend their entire lives avoiding. And in this audiobook titled Hard Work Trap, Why Hard Work is a Trap. The real reason why you stay broke. You're going to confront that question head on, not with hype, not with fantasy, but with clarity. Because here is the uncomfortable truth. Hard work is not the problem, but believing that hard work alone will make you rich, that is the trap. And it's a trap that millions of people are stuck in right now. In this audiobook, you will discover why working harder is not the same as building wealth, why discipline without direction leads to burnout, why effort without leverage keeps you stuck, and most importantly, how to break free from the system that quietly keeps you trading your life for survival. We will go chapter by chapter. First, we will expose the illusion, the belief system you were taught about money, work, and success. Then, we will uncover the real game, how wealth is actually built in the modern world. After that, we will rebuild your mindset, shifting from effort-based thinking to leverage-based thinking, and finally, we will give you a new framework, one that allows you to escape the trap without losing your discipline, your ambition, or your identity. This is not financial advice. This is education, and more importantly, it's awareness. Because once you see the trap clearly, you can never unsee it. Here is the line I want you to remember as we begin. Hard work can build your life, but it will never buy your freedom. Let that sit with you. If that line hit something inside you, if it made you pause for even a second, then this audiobook is for you. And if you're ready to stop guessing, stop grinding blindly, and start understanding the real game, then stay with me. Because what you're about to hear might completely change how you see your life. Chapter 1. The Lie You Were Raised On. From the moment you were a child, you were given a script. It sounded simple. Work hard, get good grades, find a stable job, stay consistent, and eventually, you will be successful. It felt logical, it felt safe, it felt true, but nobody ever stopped to ask one critical question. Successful? By whose definition? Because if you look around today, really look, you will see people working harder than ever before. Longer hours, more pressure, more side hustles, more burnout, and yet more debt, more stress, more financial insecurity. How is that possible? How can a system promise that hard work leads to success while producing millions of people who work hard and still struggle? That contradiction is not an accident. It is the foundation of the trap. You were taught to value effort, but you were never taught to understand leverage. You were taught to trade time, but you were never taught to multiply it. You were taught to be reliable, but never to be strategic. And so you entered adulthood with a powerful engine, but no map. You push harder, you try more, you sacrifice more, but you're still moving in circles. Because effort without direction doesn't create freedom. It creates dependency. And here's where it gets even deeper. Most people don't question this system because it feels noble. Hard work feels honorable. It feels like integrity, like discipline, like doing the right thing, and it is, but only to a point, because there is a ceiling to how much effort alone can produce. As one of the ideas echoed in the reference material explains, discipline and hard work have limits. You can only cut expenses and work more hours before your life starts collapsing under the weight of it. Think about that. There is a ceiling, and most people hit it without even realizing. They just feel tired, frustrated, stuck, but they don't know why. So they assume the answer is work harder. But that's like being stuck in a maze and deciding the solution is to run faster. Speed doesn't matter if you're going in the wrong direction. Let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone who works incredibly hard, yet always seems broke? And then you meet someone else who doesn't seem to work nearly as hard, but somehow has more freedom, more money, more control over their life. That difference is not luck. It's not talent. It's not even intelligence. It's understanding. One person is playing the effort game. The other is playing the leverage game. And until you understand the difference, you will stay stuck in the first one. Here's another uncomfortable truth. The system you were raised in was never designed to make you rich. It was designed to make you functional, to make you productive, to make you reliable, to make you part of a machine that keeps running, and there's nothing wrong with that. Unless you expect that system to give you something it was never built to provide. Freedom. Because freedom requires something different. It requires ownership. It requires leverage. It requires thinking in a way that most people were never taught. And that's where the shift begins. Not in your job, not in your income, but in your awareness. Because once you realize that hard work is only one piece of the puzzle, you stop worshiping it as the entire solution. You start asking better questions. Questions like, what am I actually building? Is my effort creating something that grows without me? Or am I just resetting the clock every single day? Those questions are the beginning of your escape. But here's the problem. Most people never ask them because they're too busy surviving, too busy paying bills, too busy chasing the next paycheck. And that's how the trap sustains itself. Not through force, but through distraction. You don't feel trapped because you don't have time to notice. But right now, you are noticing, and that changes everything. Because awareness is the first crack in the system, and once that crack appears, it only gets bigger. In the next chapter, we're going to go deeper. We're going to break down exactly why working harder often makes you poorer, and why the more effort you invest without strategy, the further you drift from real wealth. And when you see this clearly, you will never look at your work the same way again. Dear friend, allow me to interrupt for a moment. Our team is currently working on improving our channel and videos. May we ask you, dear viewer, what you like about our videos, or perhaps what you would like to see in our videos? Perhaps a different video format, or a different format for presenting audiobooks. Be skeptical. Your skeptical expert opinion can help us improve our videos even more. Thank you very much. We look forward to your comments under the video. Let's continue. Chapter 2. Why working harder makes you poorer. There is a moment that happens to almost everyone. It doesn't happen in childhood. It doesn't happen in school. It happens later, quietly. When life starts getting serious, bills show up, responsibilities increase, and suddenly you realize something strange. No matter how hard you work, it never feels like enough. You push more hours. You take extra shifts. You say yes when your body is saying no. And for a while, it feels productive. It feels like progress. But then something unexpected happens. Your expenses rise. Your stress rises. Your time disappears. And somehow, your freedom stays exactly the same. That is not coincidence. That is structure. Because when you rely only on hard work, you enter a loop where effort creates income, but income requires more effort to maintain. And that loop has no exit. Let me explain it simply. If your income depends on your time, then every dollar you earn has a ceiling. There are only 24 hours in a day, and even if you push yourself to the limit, you cannot expand time. So what do most people do? They try to compress more work into less life. They wake up earlier, sleep later, sacrifice weekends, ignore their health, delay their happiness, all in the name of getting ahead. But here's the reality. You're not getting ahead. You're getting deeper, deeper into a system where your survival depends on your output. And the more you output, the more you need to continue. It becomes addictive, not because it feels good, but because stopping feels dangerous. And that's how the trap tightens. You don't just work hard, you become dependent on working hard. You begin to believe that rest is laziness, that slowing down is failure, that if you stop pushing, everything will collapse. And that belief is what keeps you stuck, because it prevents you from ever stepping back and asking, is this actually working? Now, let's go deeper. There is a hidden cost to hard work that nobody talks about. Opportunity cost. Every hour you spend working is an hour you cannot spend building something that works without you. Every ounce of energy you pour into maintaining your current situation is energy you cannot invest into changing it. And over time, that trade becomes invisible. You get used to it. You normalize it. You stop questioning it. Until one day, you look up and realize years have passed and nothing has changed. That is one of the most painful realizations a person can have. Not that they failed, but that they were stuck in motion without direction. And here's where it becomes even more dangerous, because society rewards this behavior. People praise you for working hard. They admire your dedication. They respect your sacrifice. And those rewards feel good. They validate your effort. But they don't change your reality. Because respect doesn't equal freedom. Recognition doesn't equal wealth. And effort alone doesn't equal ownership. Let me say that again. Effort without ownership is just survival. Now think about this. If you stop working today, does your income stop? If the answer is yes, then you don't have a system. You have a dependency. And there is nothing wrong with starting there. Everyone starts there, but the mistake is staying there. The mistake is believing that if you just push harder, it will eventually turn into freedom. It won't, because the system doesn't evolve automatically. It evolves when you change how you think, and that shift is uncomfortable because it requires you to question everything you've been taught. It requires you to admit that maybe, just maybe, you've been climbing the wrong mountain, not because you're lazy, not because you're incapable, but because nobody ever showed you a different path. And here's something most people don't realize. The wealthy don't rely on effort the way you were taught to. They don't trade time for money at the same scale. They build systems. They use leverage. They create assets. And those assets work for them. even when they sleep, even when they rest, even when they step away. That's the difference. Not intelligence, not luck, structure. One person is pushing a boulder uphill every day. The other builds a machine that moves the boulder once and keeps it moving. And once you see that, it becomes impossible to ignore. Because now, the question changes. It's no longer, how can I work harder? It becomes, how can I build something that works for me? That question is the turning point. But most people never reach it because they're too exhausted to think, too busy to reflect, too conditioned to question the system they've been living in for years. But you, right now, you're starting to see it. And that's where everything begins, because awareness creates discomfort, and discomfort creates change. Now here's where I want you to pause. Take a moment and ask yourself honestly, if you keep living exactly the way you are right now, working the same way, thinking the same way, chasing the same structure, where will you be in 5 years? Will your life be different or just more intense? Will you be free or just more tired? That question is not meant to scare you. It's meant to wake you up. Because once you see the pattern, you have a choice. You can continue or you can redesign. And in the next chapter, we're going to expose the real reason why most people stay broke, even when they earn more money. Because the truth is, income is not the problem. And once you understand what actually is, you will never look at money the same way again. Chapter 3. The real reason you stay broke. Let's strip away the illusion. Let's remove the comfort. Let's stop pretending it's just about income. Because if money alone solved the problem, then high earners would never struggle. And yet they do. You've seen it. People making more than ever before, but somehow living paycheck to paycheck. People getting promotions, but feeling more trapped than before. People increasing their income, but not increasing their freedom. So what's really going on? The answer is simple, but uncomfortable. You don't stay broke because you don't make enough. You stay broke because you were never taught how money actually works. And more importantly, you were never taught how money behaves. Because money is not just something you earn. It's something you manage. It's something you direct. It's something you control. Or it controls you. And most people are being controlled. There's a powerful idea hidden in one of the reference transcripts that money is not just currency. It's a reflection of value and perception. Think about that for a second. Money flows where value is created. But most people spend their lives creating value for someone else's system, not their own. So even though they work hard, the ownership of that value doesn't belong to them. And that's where the leak begins. Let me break this down clearly. There are 3 levels to money: earning, keeping, growing. Most people only focus on the first one, earning. They believe that if they can just make more, everything else will fix itself. But it doesn't. Because if you don't control the second level, keeping, then every increase in income just becomes an increase in lifestyle. More money comes in, more money goes out. And the cycle repeats. This is why you can double your income and still feel stuck. Because your structure didn't change. Only the numbers did. And then there's the third level, growing. This is where the real difference is made. This is where money starts working for you. This is where leverage begins. But most people never reach this level. Not because they're incapable, but because they're never taught to think this way. They're taught to survive, not to build. They're taught to consume, not to multiply. And so they stay in the loop. Earn, spend, repeat. Earn, spend, repeat. And over time, that loop becomes identity. I'm just someone who works hard. I'm just someone trying to get by. I'm just someone who needs to earn more. But that identity keeps you locked in place because it never questions the system itself. It only tries to perform better inside it. And here's where it gets even deeper. Because the system is designed to keep you comfortable enough, not to question it. You get small wins, a raise, a bonus, a promotion, just enough to feel progress, but not enough to create freedom. And that balance keeps you moving, keeps you busy, keeps you occupied. So you don't step back and ask, why am I still here? Now let me ask you something directly. If you stopped earning tomorrow, how long could you survive? A week? A month? A few months? That answer tells you everything, because true wealth is not how much you make. It's how long you can live without needing to make anything at all. And most people are far closer to zero than they realize. That's not a judgment, that's awareness. Because once you see that clearly, you stop chasing income as the ultimate goal. And you start building something different. You start building stability. You start building systems. You start building assets. And that shift changes everything. But here's the part most people avoid, because it requires honesty, real honesty, not the version you tell others, the version you admit to yourself. Are you building something, or are you maintaining something? Are you moving forward or just staying afloat? Are you creating freedom or just delaying pressure? Those questions cut deep because they force you to see the truth. And the truth is, most people are not building wealth. They are renting their lives, renting their time, renting their energy, renting their future, one paycheck at a time. And the cost of that is invisible until it's too late, until years pass, until opportunities close, until energy fades. And that's when the realization hits. Not that you didn't work hard enough, but that you worked hard on the wrong things. Now here's the turning point, because this is where most people either wake up or go back to sleep. If you're still listening right now, you're waking up. You're starting to see the pattern. You're starting to question the structure, and that means you're ready for the next step. Because in the next chapter, we're going to break one of the biggest myths you've ever been told. The idea that saving money alone will make you rich. And once you understand why that belief is incomplete, you will begin to see exactly what's been missing from your strategy all along. If you enjoy these audiobooks and want to support the channel, consider joining our private members community. Members get early access to new audiobooks and exclusive wealth lessons. Chapter 4. Why saving alone will never make you rich. There is a piece of advice almost everyone has heard. Save your money, be frugal, spend less than you earn, and over time, you will build wealth. On the surface, it sounds responsible, it sounds disciplined, it sounds like the right thing to do. And to a certain point, it is. But here's the problem. Saving money can protect you, but it cannot free you. Let that sink in. Because this is where many people get stuck for years. They become extremely disciplined savers. They cut expenses. They track every dollar. They sacrifice comfort. They delay enjoyment. And slowly, they build a cushion, a sense of safety, but not a sense of freedom. Because no matter how much you save, there is still a limit. You can only reduce your expenses so much before your life starts shrinking, before everything becomes restriction, before you start feeling like you're surviving instead of living. And even if you become incredibly disciplined, there's another problem: time. Because saving is slow, painfully slow. It depends on how much you earn and how much you can keep. And if your income is limited by your time, then your savings are limited too. This is why so many people feel like they're doing everything right, but still not getting ahead, because they are playing defense, not offense. They are protecting what they have, but not creating anything new. And over time, that creates frustration, because discipline without progress feels like punishment. Now, let's be clear. Saving is important. It creates stability, it creates breathing room, it gives you time to think, and without it, you are constantly under pressure. But saving alone is not a strategy for wealth. It's a strategy for survival. And that's a very different game. There's a line of thinking reflected in the reference material that explains this clearly. You can only cut your expenses so much before your life starts to feel empty, and you can only work so much before you run out of time. That's the ceiling, and once you hit it, you feel stuck. Because no matter how disciplined you are, you cannot compress your life into endless sacrifice. Eventually, you need expansion, you need growth, you need leverage. And this is where most people hesitate, because stepping beyond saving requires thinking differently. It requires risk, not reckless risk, but intentional movement. It requires you to stop asking, how do I keep what I have, and start asking, how do I multiply what I have? That shift is everything, because saving preserves value, but only growth creates wealth. Let me give you an image. Imagine you have a bucket. Saving is making sure the bucket doesn't leak. That matters, because if your bucket is full of holes, nothing you earn will stay. But what happens if your bucket is small? Even if it doesn't leak, it can only hold so much. Now imagine, instead of just protecting the bucket, you start building a system that fills it continuously. Streams of water, multiple sources, constant flow. Now the game changes, because it's no longer about protecting a limited container, it's about increasing the flow. That's the difference between saving and building. One protects, the other expands, and most people never make that transition. They stay in protection mode, they stay cautious, they stay controlled, because it feels safe. But safety, without growth, is just a slower version of being stuck. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable, because many people attach their identity to being responsible. They pride themselves on discipline, on restraint, on control, and those are powerful traits. But if they are not paired with vision, they become limitations, because you can be disciplined and still be stuck. You can be responsible and still be trapped. You can be careful and still never move forward. And that realization can be hard to accept, because it challenges everything you've been doing. It forces you to ask, is my strategy actually working? Not in theory, not in intention, but in reality. Is it moving you closer to freedom or just keeping you stable? Because stability is not the same as progress. Now take a moment. Think about your own life, your own habits, your own patterns. Are you focused only on saving, or are you building something that grows? Are you protecting your income, or are you multiplying it? Are you playing defense or are you learning how to play offense? Those questions are the beginning of a different mindset, a mindset that doesn't reject discipline, but uses it as a foundation for something bigger. Because the goal is not to stop working hard. The goal is to make your work for you. And that requires something most people never develop: leverage. In the next chapter, we're going to break that down. We're going to explore what leverage actually means, why it is the real difference between workers and wealth builders, and how once you understand it, you can never go back to thinking the same way again. Because this is where the game truly changes. Chapter 5. Leverage, the game you were never taught. There is a word that quietly separates two worlds. Most people never hear it explained properly. Most people never realize they're missing it. But once you understand it, it becomes impossible to ignore. That word is leverage. Leverage is the reason one person can work 10 hours a day and stay stuck, while another can work fewer hours and create exponential results. Leverage is the reason some people are paid once and others are paid repeatedly for the same effort. Leverage is the difference between effort and impact. And here's the truth: you were never taught how to use it because the system you grew up in was built around effort. Show up, do the work, get paid, repeat. That's the model, and it works for survival. But it doesn't work for freedom, because without leverage, every result you create is temporary. You stop working, the results stop, you take a break, the income pauses, you get sick, everything slows down. That is not a system. That is dependency. Now let's break this down simply. Leverage means using something other than your time to create results. It means your effort is no longer the only input. It means something continues working, even when you don't. And there are different forms of leverage. Time leverage, using other people's time. Skill leverage, using specialized knowledge. Capital leverage, using money to generate more money. Technology leverage, using systems, content, or platforms that scale. Most people only use one: their own time. And that's the weakest form, because it's limited, finite, exhaustible. You can only push so far before something breaks: your energy, your health, your motivation, and when that happens, everything slows down. But leverage changes the equation. It allows you to detach results from effort, not completely, but significantly. It allows you to create once and benefit multiple times. It allows you to build systems instead of repeating tasks. And once you understand this, you start seeing the world differently. You start noticing patterns. You see someone creating content once and reaching thousands, millions, repeatedly. You see someone building a business that generates income without constant presence. You see someone investing money and letting it grow without daily effort, and you realize they are not working less because they are lazy. They are working differently because they understand leverage. Now here's where most people get confused. They think leverage means avoiding hard work. It doesn't. In fact, leverage often requires more effort at the beginning, more thinking, more planning, more patience, because instead of immediate results, you are building something that compounds, and that takes time. But once it starts, the difference is massive, because effort compounds, time multiplies, results accelerate, and suddenly, you are no longer stuck in the loop of trading hours for income. You are creating something that grows beyond you. This is why the idea of just work harder is incomplete, because without leverage, working harder only increases linear results. 1 hour more work equals 1 hour more income. But with leverage, 1 hour of work can produce results far beyond that. Results that continue even after that hour is gone. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, where is your leverage? Not where you wish it was, not where you plan it to be, but right now. Are you relying only on your time, or are you building something that can operate without you? That question is uncomfortable because for most people, the answer is clear, and that clarity can either discourage you or empower you. Because once you see the gap, you have the opportunity to close it, but only if you're willing to think differently, only if you're willing to step outside the pattern you've been following for years. And here's the part most people struggle with, because it requires letting go of a belief that feels safe, the belief that effort alone is enough. It's not. Effort is the foundation, but leverage is the multiplier. And without the multiplier, you will always hit a ceiling. No matter how disciplined you are, no matter how committed you are, no matter how hard you push, there will always be a limit. But with leverage, that limit expands. Now here's something important. You don't need to have everything figured out right now. You don't need to suddenly build a perfect system overnight. That's not the goal. The goal is awareness. Because awareness changes how you move. It changes how you think. It changes what you focus on. Instead of asking, how can I work more? You start asking, how can I make this work without me? Instead of asking, how can I earn more today? You start asking, what can I build that earns repeatedly? Those questions are powerful because they shift you from effort to strategy. And strategy is where freedom begins. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to go even deeper. We're going to expose one of the most dangerous habits that keeps people stuck in the hard work trap. A habit that feels productive, but silently destroys your progress. And once you see it clearly, you'll realize why so many people stay busy, but never move forward. Chapter 6. The productivity illusion that keeps you stuck. There is a habit that looks like progress. It feels like discipline. It even gets praised. But in reality, it's one of the biggest reasons people stay trapped. That habit is being busy, not productive, not strategic. Busy, because busyness gives you a dangerous illusion. It makes you feel like you're moving forward when you're actually standing still. Think about your day, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. Messages, emails, tasks, meetings, deadlines, constant motion, constant activity, constant pressure. And at the end of it, you feel exhausted. But here's the real question. Did anything actually move you closer to freedom? Or did you just maintain your current position? Because there's a difference, a massive difference. Maintenance keeps you alive. Progress moves you forward. And most people confuse the two. They spend their entire day maintaining their life, handling tasks, solving problems, reacting to situations. And because they are busy doing it, they assume they are progressing. But they're not. They're surviving. Now here's where it gets deeper. Because busyness is addictive. It gives you a sense of importance. It fills your time. It distracts you from bigger questions. It keeps your mind occupied. So you don't have to confront the truth. And that truth is uncomfortable. Because if you stop, even for a moment, you might realize that everything you're doing is just keeping the system running, not changing it. That's why many people avoid stillness. They avoid silence. They avoid reflection. Because in those moments, the questions appear. Is this really what I want? Where is this leading? Why am I still in the same place? And instead of answering them, they go back to being busy. Because it's easier, it's safer, it's familiar. But it's also the reason nothing changes. Now let me give you a clear distinction. Busy people focus on tasks. Productive people focus on outcomes. Busy people react. Productive people design. Busy people fill their time. Productive people multiply it. And that difference is everything. Because if your entire day is consumed by tasks, then you have no space to think, no space to build, no space to create leverage. You are constantly operating inside the system instead of stepping outside it, and that's where the trap becomes invisible. Because from the outside, you look successful, you look disciplined, you look committed, but internally, you feel stuck. And that disconnect is one of the hardest things to explain because you're doing everything right. You're working hard, you're staying consistent, you're showing up, and yet something feels off. That feeling is your awareness trying to break through. It's telling you that effort alone is not enough. That activity is not the same as progress. That movement is not the same as direction. But most people ignore it. They silence it. They push it down because listening to it requires change. And change is uncomfortable. Now here's the truth you need to hear. You don't need more time. You need more clarity. Because the issue is not that you're not working hard enough. It's that your effort is being scattered, divided, consumed by things that don't move you forward. And until you take control of that, nothing will change. There's a powerful pattern reflected across the reference materials. Most people fail not because they lack effort, but because they never learn how to direct their time in a way that builds them instead of draining them. That's the shift. From draining to building. From reacting to designing. From busyness to leverage. Now pause again and look at your life honestly. How much of your day is spent maintaining versus building? How much time do you invest in things that grow versus things that just keep things running? How often do you step back and think instead of just doing? Those questions are uncomfortable, but they are necessary because they reveal the truth. And once you see that truth, you can start making different decisions. Small at first, then bigger, then transformational. Because escaping the hard work trap does not start with doing more. It starts with doing differently. Now here's where the shift begins. You start protecting your time, not from work, but from meaningless work. You start prioritizing leverage, even if it feels slow at first. You start asking, what actually moves me forward instead of what keeps me busy? And that question changes everything. Because once you stop filling your life with noise, you create space. Space to think. Space to build. Space to create something that lasts. And that space is where freedom begins. In the next chapter, we're going to confront something even deeper. Something that quietly controls your decisions, your habits, and your entire relationship with money. Fear. Because until you understand how fear shapes your actions, you will keep choosing safety over growth. And that choice will keep you exactly where you are. Dear viewer, share your success story, even if it is small. It can motivate other people to visit the comment section and read it, and it can inspire them. Also, don't be shy about asking questions, and perhaps someone with more experience or someone who has been through this will share the answer. Remember, it is only through communication that people become stronger and better. Thank you. Chapter 7. The fear that keeps you small. There is something beneath all of this, beneath the long hours, beneath the constant busyness, beneath the need to keep working harder. It's not just habit, it's not just conditioning, it's fear, quiet, subtle, persistent, and incredibly powerful, because fear doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. It tells you to stay where you are, to not take risks, to not step outside the system you've always known. It convinces you that safety is more important than growth. And over time, that belief becomes your reality. Now let's be clear. Fear is not the enemy. Fear is natural. Fear is protective. It exists to keep you safe. But the problem is, your brain cannot always distinguish between real danger and perceived risk. To your mind, losing your job feels like danger. Trying something new feels like danger. Stepping into uncertainty feels like danger. So what does it do? It pulls you back. It keeps you in familiar territory, even if that territory is slowly draining you. That's the trap. Because the same system that limits you also feels safe. You know the routine, you know the structure, you know what to expect, and even if it's not ideal, it's predictable. And predictability feels comfortable. But comfort is where growth stops. Let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever had an idea, something bigger, something different, something that could change your life, and you didn't act on it? Not because you didn't care, but because you hesitated. You overthought. You waited. You told yourself, maybe later. That moment is fear in action. And it doesn't just stop you once, it creates a pattern. Because every time you choose safety over growth, you reinforce the belief that staying small is the right move. And over time, that becomes your identity. You become someone who plays it safe, someone who waits, someone who stays within the lines. And the most dangerous part? It feels responsible. It feels mature. It feels like you're doing the right thing. But in reality, you're slowly closing doors. Opportunities pass, time moves, energy fades, and you stay in the same place, wondering why nothing changes. Now here's the deeper truth. Fear doesn't just stop action. It shapes your thinking. It makes you focus on what could go wrong instead of what could go right. It makes you overestimate risk and underestimate opportunity. It keeps your vision small, your decisions cautious, your life controlled. And when it comes to money, fear is even stronger, because money is tied to survival, to security, to stability. So any threat to it feels serious. And that's why most people never step outside the system, not because they can't, but because they're afraid to. Afraid of failing, afraid of losing, afraid of uncertainty, afraid of judgment. And those fears keep them locked in place. Now here's where the shift begins. Because fear doesn't disappear. You don't eliminate it. You don't wait until you feel confident. You move with it. You act despite it. You understand that fear is not a signal to stop, but a signal that you're stepping into something new, something unfamiliar, something that has the potential to change your life. There's a powerful pattern reflected in the reference material. Most people wait until they feel ready, but readiness never comes before action. It comes after it. That's the truth. You don't become confident and then act. You act and confidence follows. But that requires courage, not loud courage, not dramatic courage, quiet courage. The kind that shows up in small decisions, the kind that says, I'm going to try this even if I'm not sure. I'm going to take a step even if it's uncomfortable. I'm going to move forward even if I don't have all the answers. That's how you break the pattern, one decision at a time. Now pause again and ask yourself, where in your life are you choosing safety instead of growth? Where are you holding back, not because you can't move forward, but because you're afraid to? What opportunities have you ignored because they felt uncertain? Those answers matter because they show you exactly where the shift needs to happen, not in your effort, not in your discipline, but in your willingness to step into the unknown. Because the truth is, everything you want exists on the other side of uncertainty. And until you're willing to face that, you will keep circling the same life. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to confront something even more powerful, your identity. Because the way you see yourself determines everything you allow yourself to achieve. And if your identity is built around struggle, then no matter how hard you work, you will always return to it. Chapter 8. The identity that keeps you trapped. There is something deeper than your habits, deeper than your work ethic, deeper than your fears. It's the invisible script running your life, your identity, not who you say you are, but who you believe you are. Because every decision you make, every action you take, every limit you accept is filtered through that belief. If you see yourself as someone who struggles, you will unconsciously create struggle. If you see yourself as someone who is just getting by, you will stay in survival mode. If you see yourself as someone who has to work harder than everyone else just to stay afloat, then no matter how much you achieve, you will return to that baseline. That is the power of identity. It doesn't just influence your actions, it defines your boundaries. And most people never question it. They inherit it from their environment, from their upbringing, from their experiences, from the systems they grow up in. And over time, it becomes truth. I'm not the kind of person who takes risks. I'm not good with money. I have to work harder than others. This is just how life is. Those statements feel real, but they are not facts. They are patterns. And patterns can be changed, but only if you become aware of them. Now here's where it connects to everything we've been talking about. The hard work trap is not just external, it's internal. It's not just about how you work, it's about how you see yourself. Because if your identity is built around effort, you will always default to working harder instead of thinking differently. You will chase effort even when strategy is needed. You will push even when you should pause. You will grind even when you should build. And that's why so many people stay stuck. Not because they lack discipline, but because their identity is tied to struggle. They don't just work hard, they believe they have to. And that belief keeps them in the loop. Now let's go deeper, because identity is reinforced by repetition. Every time you act in a certain way, you strengthen that version of yourself. Every time you choose the familiar, you confirm your current identity. Every time you avoid discomfort, you reinforce your limits. And over time, those small decisions become your life. But here's the shift. Identity is not fixed. It is built. And if it can be built, it can be rebuilt. That means you are not stuck. You are conditioned. And conditioning can be changed. But it requires something most people avoid: awareness, honesty, responsibility. You have to look at yourself without filters, without excuses, without stories, and ask, who am I being right now? Not who you want to be, not who you pretend to be, but who you actually are, based on your actions, because your actions tell the truth. Now, here's the uncomfortable part, because this is where most people turn away. If your life is not where you want it to be, your current identity is part of the reason, not the only reason, but a significant one. And that's not blame, that's power. Because if your identity helped create your current situation, then changing your identity can change your future. But that requires a shift, a conscious one. You have to start seeing yourself differently, not in a fake way, not in a motivational way, but in a grounded, intentional way. Instead of saying, I'm just someone who works hard, you begin to say, I'm someone who builds leverage. Instead of saying, I need to earn more, you begin to say, I need to create systems. Instead of saying, I'm stuck, you begin to say, I'm learning how to move differently. That shift changes your behavior, because identity drives action, and action creates results. There's a consistent theme across the reference materials. Your life only changes when you take ownership and stop waiting for external factors to fix it. That's identity, ownership, responsibility, control. And once you step into that, everything starts to shift. Not overnight, not instantly, but steadily. Because now you're no longer reacting to life. You're shaping it. Now pause again and ask yourself, what identity have you been carrying? What beliefs have you accepted about yourself that might not actually be true? Where are you limiting yourself? Not because you lack ability, but because you've defined yourself too narrowly. Those questions are powerful because they reveal the internal boundaries that have been guiding your life. And once you see those boundaries, you can begin to expand them, but only if you're willing to let go of the version of yourself that kept you safe, but also kept you stuck, because growth requires transformation, and transformation requires letting go. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to connect everything together. We're going to explore how the system, your habits, your fears, and your identity all work together to keep you in the hard work trap. And once you see the full picture, you will finally understand why breaking free requires more than just effort. Chapter 9. The invisible system that keeps you running. By now, you're starting to feel it. That quiet shift in perspective. The realization that something deeper is at play. That this isn't just about working harder or making more money or even being more disciplined. It's about a system. An invisible one, a system that shapes how you think, how you work, how you live, without you even realizing it. And once you see it clearly, you understand why so many people stay stuck without ever knowing why. Because this system doesn't trap you with force. It traps you with familiarity. Let's connect the dots. You were taught to work hard. That built your habits. You were taught to stay safe. That shaped your fears. You were taught to follow the path. That formed your identity. And all of that feeds into one cycle: work, earn, spend, repeat. work, earn, spend, repeat. A loop that feels normal, a loop that feels necessary, a loop that feels like life itself. But here's the truth. That loop is not designed for your freedom. It's designed for continuity. It keeps everything running. It keeps people working. It keeps systems functioning. And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Unless you expect it to give you something it was never built to provide. Freedom. Because freedom requires interruption. It requires stepping outside the loop. It requires questioning what most people accept without thinking. And that's where most people stop. Because stepping outside the system feels uncomfortable. It feels uncertain. It feels risky. So they stay inside. They optimize within the loop. They try to earn more, save more, work more. But they never question the structure itself. And that's why nothing fundamentally changes. Now here's where it becomes powerful. Because once you see the system, you realize something important. You're not stuck because you're not trying hard enough. You're stuck because you've been playing a game with rules that don't lead to freedom. That realization is not discouraging. It's liberating. Because it means the problem is not you. It's the framework. And frameworks can be changed, but only if you're willing to think differently. Now let's go deeper. Because this system is reinforced everywhere. In school, in jobs, in society. You are rewarded for compliance, for consistency, for reliability. You are trained to follow instructions, meet expectations, stay within structure, and again, those are valuable skills. But they are not the same skills required to build freedom, because freedom requires creation, ownership, leverage, vision. And those are rarely taught. They are discovered, often through frustration, through questioning, through moments like this, where something inside you starts to shift. Now here's the key insight. The system is not your enemy, but it is not your solution either. It is a starting point, not a destination. And the mistake most people make is treating it like the final goal. They spend their lives trying to perfect their position within it, instead of building something beyond it. And that's why they feel stuck, because no matter how much they improve, they are still operating within the same structure. Now pause for a moment and look at your own life, your routine, your patterns, your daily cycle. How much of it is chosen and how much of it is inherited? How much of it moves you forward and how much of it keeps you in place? Those questions are uncomfortable, but they are necessary because they reveal the truth. And the truth is, most people are not designing their lives. They are following a script they never wrote, a script they never questioned, a script that keeps them busy, but not free. Now here's where the shift becomes real, because awareness alone is not enough. You have to act on it. You have to start making decisions that break the pattern. Small at first, then bigger, then transformative. You have to start asking different questions. Instead of, what do I need to do today? You ask, what am I building long term? Instead of, how can I earn more this month? You ask, what can I create that grows over time? Instead of, how do I stay busy? You ask, how do I create leverage? Those questions change your direction. And direction is more important than speed, because once you're moving in the right direction, progress becomes inevitable. But here's the challenge, because this is where most people hesitate. Breaking the system requires patience. It requires discipline, not the kind of discipline that keeps you working endlessly, but the kind that allows you to focus on what truly matters. It requires you to resist distractions, to ignore noise, to stay committed to a path that doesn't always show immediate results. And that's difficult because we live in a world that rewards instant feedback, quick wins, visible progress. But real change takes time. And that's why most people give up. Not because it doesn't work, but because it doesn't work fast enough. But if you stay with it, if you keep building, if you keep shifting your thinking, something begins to happen. The system starts to loosen. The patterns start to break. The opportunities start to appear. And slowly, you move from being controlled by the system to controlling your own path. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to go even deeper. We're going to break down the difference between income and true wealth. Because understanding that difference is the key to everything that comes next. Dear friend, you are definitely on the right track if you are watching this video. Like, subscribe, and write in the comments which topic or problem concerns you the most. We promise to prepare a professional video explanation at your request. Chapter 10. Income is not wealth. This is where most people get confused. Not a little confused, completely misled. Because they believe one simple idea. If I earn more, I will be free. It sounds logical. It feels right. It even seems obvious. But it's not true. Because income is not wealth. And until you understand that difference, you will keep chasing something that never gives you what you actually want. Let's break it down. Income is what you earn. Wealth is what you keep and grow. Income is active. Wealth is sustained. Income depends on your effort. Wealth depends on your structure. And most people only focus on the first one. They chase higher salaries, better jobs, more opportunities, and when they get them, they feel progress. But then something strange happens. Their lifestyle expands, their expenses increase, their obligations grow, and suddenly they are right back where they started, working, earning, spending, repeating, just at a higher level. That's the illusion, because from the outside, it looks like success. But internally, it feels the same. Pressure, dependency, lack of control. Because nothing fundamental has changed. They still rely on income. They still trade time for money. They still reset the clock every single day. That is not wealth. That is upgraded survival. Now here's where it gets deeper. Because income is seductive. It gives you immediate feedback. You work, you get paid, you perform, you get rewarded. It feels good. It feels validating. It feels like progress. But wealth is different. Wealth is quiet. It builds slowly. It compounds over time. It doesn't always give you immediate results. And that's why most people ignore it, because it doesn't satisfy the need for instant reward. But here's the truth. If your income stopped today and your life stopped with it, you're not wealthy. You're dependent. And that's not a criticism. That's awareness. Because once you see that clearly, you stop measuring success by how much you earn and start measuring it by how much control you have. Control over your time, control over your decisions, control over your life. That's wealth. Now let's go even deeper, because there's a hidden trap inside income. The more you earn, the more you can lose. The higher your lifestyle, the higher your obligations. The more you depend on maintaining that level, the less freedom you actually have. And that creates pressure, constant pressure, because now you can't afford to slow down. You can't afford to take risks. You can't afford to step back. You are locked into maintaining your current level, and that's why many high earners feel trapped, not because they lack money, but because they lack freedom. They built income, but never built wealth. And those are two very different things. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, if your income disappeared, what would remain? Would you still have stability? Would you still have options? Would you still have control? Or would everything collapse? That answer is your reality, not your potential, not your intention, your current reality. And once you see that, you can start changing it. Because the goal is not just to earn more. The goal is to build something that doesn't depend on your constant effort. Something that continues, even when you don't. That's wealth. Now here's where most people go wrong. They think wealth is about saving large amounts of money. It's not. Saving helps, but it doesn't create expansion. Wealth is built through systems, assets, leverage, things that produce value over time, things that grow, things that multiply. And that requires a different mindset, a different approach, a different way of thinking. Instead of asking, how can I earn more? You begin to ask, how can I build something that earns without me? Instead of focusing on short-term income, you focus on long-term creation. Instead of chasing immediate results, you invest in compounding ones. That shift is everything, because it moves you from effort to strategy, from survival to growth, from income to wealth. There's a consistent theme across the reference material. People who build real wealth don't rely solely on earning more. They use leverage to create results beyond their time. That's the difference. Not how hard you work, but how your work is structured. Now here's the challenge, because this is where most people hesitate. Building wealth takes time. It requires patience. It requires delayed gratification. It requires you to invest effort today for results that may not appear immediately. And that's difficult, because we are conditioned to expect quick rewards, instant feedback, immediate progress. But real wealth doesn't work that way. It builds quietly, slowly, then suddenly. And if you can stay with that process, if you can remain consistent, if you can keep building even when results are not visible, something powerful happens. Momentum, compounding, acceleration, and eventually, you reach a point where your effort is no longer the only driver, where your systems start working for you, where your income is no longer tied directly to your time. And that's when everything changes, because now you are no longer trapped. You are building freedom. Now in the next chapter, we're going to go even deeper. We're going to explore the concept of assets, what they really are, and why they are the foundation of true wealth. Because once you understand assets, you will finally see the path out of the hard work trap. Chapter 11, Assets, the foundation of real freedom. If income is what you earn, then assets are what set you free. This is the shift most people never make, not because it's complicated, but because it's never explained clearly. So let's make it simple. An asset is anything that puts money, value, or opportunity back into your life without requiring your constant presence. That's it. That's the definition. It works, even when you don't. It grows, even when you're resting. It produces, even when you step away. And once you understand that, you start to see everything differently. Because now the question is no longer, how much did I earn today? It becomes, what did I build that continues tomorrow? That shift is everything. Now let's go deeper. Because most people don't build assets. They build obligations, things that require maintenance, things that consume time, things that drain energy, and over time, those obligations stack up. More bills, more responsibilities, more pressure, more dependence on income, and that creates the illusion of progress, while actually increasing the weight you carry. But assets do the opposite. They reduce pressure, they increase options, they create space, because instead of taking from you, they give back to you. Now here's where it becomes powerful, because assets don't have to be massive, they don't have to be complex, they don't have to be perfect, they just have to be intentional. A piece of content that continues to reach people, a skill that can be applied repeatedly, a system that solves a problem at scale, an investment that grows over time, a business that operates beyond your direct input. These are all forms of assets, different shapes, different speeds, but the same principle. They work beyond your immediate effort. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, what am I building right now that will still exist 5 years from today? Not what you're earning, not what you're maintaining, what you're building, because that answer reveals your trajectory. If everything you do resets daily, then you are stuck in the loop. But if even a small part of your effort compounds over time, then you are moving in a different direction. Now here's the challenge. Because building assets requires patience, it requires consistency, it requires you to invest time and energy without immediate reward. And that's difficult, because most people are conditioned to expect results quickly, to see progress instantly, to feel validation right away. But assets don't work like that. They grow slowly, quietly, almost invisibly at first, and that's why most people give up. They start, but they don't continue. They try, but they don't commit, because they don't see results fast enough. But here's the truth. The early stages of building anything meaningful are always the hardest, because you are creating momentum from nothing. You are pushing against resistance. You are building without feedback, and that requires discipline. Not the kind of discipline that keeps you busy, but the kind that keeps you consistent. Because consistency is what turns effort into results. There's a powerful idea reflected across the reference materials. Real growth is built in the moments when no one is watching, when results are invisible, and when most people would stop. That's the stage you have to push through. Because once you do, something shifts. The effort starts to compound. The results start to appear. The system starts to work. And suddenly, what felt slow becomes powerful. Now here's where it connects to everything we've been talking about. Hard work is not useless. It's essential. But the purpose of hard work is not to stay in motion. It's to build something that removes the need for constant motion. That's the difference. You don't work hard forever. You work hard to create something that eventually works for you. And that requires intention. It requires you to stop scattering your effort and start focusing it. Instead of doing many things with no direction, you focus on building one thing with depth, something that grows, something that compounds, something that creates leverage. Now ask yourself again, what am I building? Not what you're planning, not what you're thinking about, what you're actually building. Because action is what creates assets, not ideas, not intentions, not conversations. Action. And that's where most people fall short. They think about building, they talk about building, They plan to build, but they don't execute consistently enough to see results. And without that, nothing changes. But if you commit, if you stay consistent, if you keep building even when it feels slow, you begin to step out of the trap. Because now, your effort is no longer temporary. It's cumulative. It's growing. It's working for you. And that's the beginning of freedom. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to take this even further. We're going to explore the concept of time and why most people are unknowingly selling their most valuable resource for far less than it's worth. Because once you understand the true value of your time, you will never trade it the same way again. Chapter 12. The price you're paying for your time. There is one resource in your life that is more valuable than money, more valuable than status, more valuable than anything you can own. And yet, most people give it away every single day without thinking twice. Your time, not your hours, not your schedule, your life itself. Because time is the only thing you can never get back. You can lose money and earn it again. You can lose opportunities and create new ones. You can even rebuild your identity. But time, once it's gone, is gone. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people are selling their time for far less than it's worth. Not because they don't care, but because they've never been taught to value it differently. They've been taught to exchange it, to trade it, to measure it in hours, instead of impact. So they wake up, give their time away, and repeat the process. Day after day, year after year, and because it's normal, they never question it. But let me ask you something. If someone offered to buy a year of your life, would you sell it? And if you did, what would the price be? Because whether you realize it or not, that's exactly what's happening. Every paycheck is a transaction. Time for money. And again, there's nothing wrong with that at the beginning. It's how most people start. But the problem is staying there. The problem is never evolving beyond that exchange. Because when your entire life is built on trading time, you are always limited, always dependent, always resetting the clock. And that's where the real cost appears. Not in money, but in missed potential. Because every hour you spend on something that doesn't grow is an hour that could have been invested into something that does. Every year you spend repeating the same cycle is a year you could have used to build something different. And over time, those lost opportunities compound silently, invisibly, until one day you look back and realize how much time has passed. That realization is one of the most painful moments a person can experience, not because they failed, but because they never questioned the system they were living in. Now here's the shift. Because valuing your time differently changes everything. You stop asking, how much can I earn per hour? And you start asking, how can I create value that isn't tied to hours at all? That question is powerful because it breaks the pattern. It moves you from trading time to multiplying it. Now let's go deeper, because your time is not just about work, it's about energy, focus, attention. Every moment you spend is an investment. Whether you realize it or not, you are either investing your time into something that builds your future or something that maintains your present. There is no neutral, and that's why awareness matters. Because once you see time as an asset, you stop wasting it. You become intentional. You become selective. You begin to protect it. not in a restrictive way, but in a strategic way. You start saying no to things that don't move you forward. You start prioritizing what actually matters. You start designing your life instead of reacting to it. And that shift creates space. Space to think, space to build, space to grow. Now here's where it connects to everything. The hard work trap is built on undervaluing your time. It convinces you that your time is only worth what someone is willing to pay you for it. It keeps you focused on hours instead of outcomes, effort instead of impact. And as long as you believe that, you will stay in the loop. But the moment you realize that your time is your most valuable asset, everything changes. You stop selling it cheaply. You stop giving it away carelessly. You start investing it wisely. And that's when you begin to move differently. Now pause again and ask yourself honestly, where is your time going? Not where you think it's going, where it's actually going. How much of it is being invested and how much of it is being spent? How much of it is building something and how much of it is just maintaining your current life? Those answers matter because they reveal your priorities, and your priorities shape your future. Now here's the truth. You don't need more time. You need better decisions because everyone has the same 24 hours. But not everyone uses them the same way. Some people trade them, some people waste them, and some people multiply them. The difference is awareness. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to take this even further. We're going to break down the concept of thinking differently and why your current way of thinking is the biggest factor determining your results. Because once you change how you think, you change how you act. And once you change how you act, your entire life begins to shift. Mate, write which city you're from. It's interesting to see which corners of the world are watching our videos. Chapter 13. The thinking that keeps you broke. Everything you've heard so far comes down to one thing. Not your job, not your income, not your circumstances. Your thinking, because the way you think determines what you see. What you see determines what you do, and what you do creates your life. That chain is always active, whether you're aware of it or not. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't think. Not deeply, not intentionally. They react. They follow patterns. They repeat what they've been taught. And because of that, they live predictable lives. Not because they lack potential, but because they never question their perspective. Let me show you what I mean. If you believe that working more hours is the only way to earn more, you will always look for more work. If you believe that money is hard to keep, you will unconsciously find ways to lose it. If you believe that success is reserved for others, you will never fully commit to your own path. Those beliefs shape your decisions, and your decisions shape your results. That's why two people can be in the same situation, with the same opportunities, and create completely different outcomes, because they think differently. Now here's where it connects to everything. The hard work trap is not just a system, it's a mindset. It's a way of thinking that says, more effort equals more success. And while that is partially true, it is incomplete because it ignores leverage, it ignores strategy, it ignores structure. And as long as you operate with that mindset, you will always default to effort, even when it's not the best solution. Now let's go deeper, because thinking differently is not about being smarter. It's about asking better questions. Most people ask, how can I get through today? How can I finish this task? How can I earn more this month? Those questions keep you in the present loop. They keep you reacting. They keep you maintaining. But people who build freedom ask different questions. What can I build that lasts? How can I make this work without me? What system can I create here? Those questions shift your focus from short-term effort to long-term impact. And that shift changes everything. Now here's the challenge, because thinking differently requires slowing down. It requires reflection. It requires you to step back and question your own assumptions. And most people avoid that because it's uncomfortable. It forces you to admit that maybe the way you've been operating is not leading where you thought it would. And that realization can be difficult, but it's also powerful, because once you see it, you have the opportunity to change. Now, here's something important. Your thinking is not fixed. It is shaped by what you consume, what you listen to, what you surround yourself with, what you repeat daily. And if you don't take control of that, you will default to whatever environment you're in. That's why many people stay stuck, not because they want to, but because they are surrounded by the same patterns, the same beliefs, the same limitations, and over time, that becomes their reality. There's a consistent idea reflected in the reference materials. Your thinking shapes your outcomes, and if your thoughts are weak or scattered, your actions will follow the same pattern. That's the foundation, because everything starts in the mind. Now pause again and ask yourself honestly, what are you thinking about every day? Not occasionally, not ideally, consistently. Are your thoughts focused on growth or survival? Are they focused on building or maintaining? Are they focused on possibility or limitation? Because those patterns are shaping your future right now. Now here's the shift. You don't need to overhaul everything overnight. You start small. You start by questioning your assumptions. You start by noticing your patterns. You start by interrupting your default reactions. Instead of immediately thinking, I need to work more, you pause and ask, is there a smarter way to approach this? Instead of thinking, I can't afford this, you ask, how can I create the ability to afford this? Those small shifts create new pathways, new ideas, new opportunities. Because once you change how you think, you change what you see. And once you change what you see, you change what's possible. Now here's the deeper truth. Most people don't fail because they lack effort. They fail because they never update their thinking. They keep applying the same logic to new situations. They keep repeating the same patterns, expecting different results. And that is what keeps them stuck. But you, right now, you are breaking that pattern. You are starting to see differently, think differently, question differently. And that means your actions will begin to change, not instantly, but inevitably. Because once your perspective shifts, your behavior follows. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to go even deeper. We're going to explore the role of discipline and why most people misunderstand it completely. Because discipline alone can either trap you or free you. And the difference comes down to how you use it. Chapter 14. Discipline, the double-edged weapon. Discipline is one of the most praised qualities in the world. People admire it, respect it, chase it, and for good reason. Because discipline is powerful. It's the ability to act. even when you don't feel like it, to stay consistent even when it's hard, to push forward when everything inside you wants to stop. That kind of strength can change your life. But here's the truth most people never hear. Discipline alone is not enough. In fact, if used incorrectly, discipline can trap you just as much as it can free you. Let that sink in, because this is where many people get stuck. They become incredibly disciplined, but in the wrong direction. They wake up early, they work long hours, they stay consistent. They push through exhaustion, and they do it every single day, but they never stop to ask, is this actually leading somewhere different? So what happens? They become highly efficient at staying stuck. That is the danger of discipline without direction, because discipline amplifies whatever you apply it to. If you apply it to growth, it accelerates your progress. If you apply it to the wrong system, it deepens your trap. And most people don't realize the difference. They believe discipline is always the answer. So when things don't change, they double down. They push harder, work more, sacrifice more. But the results stay the same. And that creates frustration, because now they're doing everything right, but nothing is improving. Now let's go deeper, because discipline is often misunderstood. Most people think discipline is about forcing yourself to work harder, to do more, to push beyond your limits. But real discipline is about control. Control over your actions, control over your focus, control over your decisions. And sometimes that means doing less, not more. It means saying no to things that don't matter. It means stepping back to think strategically. It means redirecting your effort instead of increasing it. There's a powerful idea reflected in the reference materials. Discipline is not about waiting for motivation. It's about acting regardless of how you feel. That's true. But here's the missing piece. What you act on matters just as much as the fact that you act. Because action without direction is just movement. And movement without direction leads nowhere. Now pause for a moment and look at your own discipline. Where are you applying it? What are you consistently doing every day? And more importantly, what is that consistency producing? Because that answer reveals everything. If your discipline is only maintaining your current life, then no matter how strong it is, it won't change your future. But if your discipline is building something that grows, something that compounds, something that creates leverage, then every day you are moving forward. That's the difference. Now here's where it becomes powerful, because once you understand this, you stop worshiping discipline as the goal, and you start using it as a tool to focus your energy, a tool to stay consistent with what matters, a tool to build something that lasts. Instead of asking, how can I be more disciplined? You begin to ask, where should I apply my discipline? That question changes everything, because now you are not just working harder, you are working smarter. You are directing your effort instead of scattering it. You are building instead of maintaining. Now here's the challenge, because this requires awareness. It requires you to step back and evaluate your actions. And most people avoid that because it forces them to confront the truth that they may have been working incredibly hard in the wrong direction. And that realization can be difficult, but it's also the turning point, because once you see it, you can change it. Now here's the shift. You start aligning your discipline with your goals. Not short-term goals, long-term outcomes. You start focusing on activities that create leverage, that build assets, that multiply your effort, and you commit to them, even when they feel slow, even when results are not immediate, even when it's uncomfortable, because you understand that this is how real progress is made, not through random effort, but through intentional action. Now ask yourself, what would happen if you applied your current level of discipline to building something that compounds, not just working, not just earning, but creating, building, expanding? What would your life look like in a year? In 5 years? That vision is possible, but only if you redirect your effort. Only if you stop using discipline to stay in the same place and start using it to move forward. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to take this even further. We're going to explore the role of focus and why, in a world full of distractions, your ability to concentrate on what truly matters is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. Because without focus, even the best strategy will fail. Chapter 15, Focus, the skill that multiplies everything. There is one skill, quiet, unnoticed, but incredibly powerful, that determines whether everything you've learned so far actually works. Focus. Not motivation, not talent, not even discipline on its own. Focus. Because you can be disciplined and still distracted. You can work hard and still be scattered. You can have the right strategy and still fail to execute it. Why? Because your attention is divided, pulled in different directions, consumed by noise, and in today's world, distraction is everywhere. Notifications, messages, endless content, constant stimulation, and every time your focus is broken, your progress slows, your thinking weakens, your results suffer. Now here's the truth. Focus is not just about concentration, it's about direction. It's about choosing what matters and eliminating what doesn't. And most people never develop this skill. They try to do everything. They say yes to everything. They chase multiple paths at once. And as a result, they never go deep enough in any one direction. That's the problem, because depth is where value is created. Depth is where leverage is built. Depth is where results compound. But depth requires focus, and focus requires sacrifice. You cannot do everything. You cannot chase every opportunity. You cannot follow every distraction. You have to choose. And that's where most people hesitate, because choosing one thing means letting go of others. It means missing out. It means uncertainty. And that feels uncomfortable, so instead, they stay scattered. They stay busy. They stay distracted. And they wonder why nothing changes. Now let's connect this to everything you've learned. You understand leverage. You understand assets. You understand time. You understand thinking. You understand discipline. But without focus, none of it comes together. Because focus is what allows you to apply everything effectively. It's what turns knowledge into action. It's what turns effort into results. It's what turns potential into reality. Now here's the deeper truth. Focus is not about doing more. It's about doing less, but better. It's about removing what doesn't matter, so you can fully commit to what does. And that requires clarity. You have to know what you're building, why you're building it, and where it's leading. Because without that clarity, your attention will always drift. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, where is your focus going? Not where you want it to go. not where you think it's going, where it's actually going, how much of your attention is spent on things that matter, and how much is being consumed by distractions, because your attention is your most valuable currency, and every time you spend it, you are making a choice to move forward or stay in place. Now here's something important. Focus is not natural. It is trained. It is built. It is developed over time. And in a world designed to distract you, building focus is one of the most powerful advantages you can have. Because while others are scattered, you are concentrated. While others are reacting, you are creating. While others are busy, you are building. There's a consistent idea reflected in the reference materials. The people who succeed are the ones who stay focused on their path while everyone else gets distracted. That's the difference. Not effort, not luck. Focus. Now here's the challenge. Because building focus requires discipline. Not just physical discipline, mental discipline. The ability to ignore noise. To resist distractions. To stay committed, even when it's boring, even when it's slow, even when it doesn't feel exciting. Because real progress is not always exciting. It's often repetitive, consistent, quiet. And that's why most people struggle. They chase stimulation. They look for excitement. They jump from one thing to another, and as a result, they never build anything meaningful. But if you can master focus, if you can stay committed to one direction, if you can block out the noise, something powerful happens. Your progress accelerates. Your results compound. Your life begins to shift. Because now, you are no longer reacting to the world. You are shaping it. Now here's the shift. You start protecting your attention. You treat it like an asset. You become intentional with where you place it. You stop giving it away freely. You stop consuming everything. You start creating more than you consume. You start building instead of scrolling. You start thinking instead of reacting. And that shift changes everything. Now ask yourself, what is the one thing that if you focused on consistently could change your life? Not 10 things, not 5, 1. Because that's where your power is. Not in doing everything, but in doing the right thing, consistently. Now in the next chapter, we're going to take this even further. We're going to explore the concept of patience and why in a world obsessed with speed, your ability to stay committed over time is what ultimately determines your success. Because without patience, even the best focus will break. Chapter 16. Patience, the discipline of long-term power. We live in a world that moves fast, too fast. Everything is instant. Messages, entertainment, feedback, results. And because of that, we've been conditioned to expect progress just as quickly. But here's the problem. Real growth doesn't follow that speed. Real wealth doesn't follow that speed. Real transformation doesn't follow that speed. And that's why most people fail. Not because they lack effort, not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack patience. They start, they try, they build for a while, and when results don't appear immediately, they stop, they switch, they restart. And every time they do that, they reset their progress. Over and over again. That's the hidden cost of impatience. It doesn't just slow you down, it keeps you stuck. Now let's connect this to everything you've learned. You understand leverage, you understand assets, you understand focus, you understand discipline. But all of those things require time. Time to grow, time to compound, time to become powerful. And without patience, you never reach that stage because You quit too early. You change direction too often. You chase what feels fast instead of what actually works. Now here's the truth. Anything meaningful in life takes longer than you expect, but once it starts working, it moves faster than you imagined. That's the paradox. Slow at the beginning, fast at the end, but only if you stay with it. Only if you commit. Only if you resist the urge to constantly switch paths. Now pause for a moment and think about your own life. How many things have you started but didn't finish? How many times have you changed direction before giving something enough time to grow? How many opportunities have you walked away from simply because they didn't produce results fast enough? Those patterns matter because they reveal something deeper, not a lack of ability, but a lack of patience. And patience is not passive. It's not waiting. It's not doing nothing. It's active, intentional, focused. It's the ability to keep moving forward, even when results are not visible, even when progress feels slow, even when doubt appears. That's real patience, and that's what most people struggle with. Because we are surrounded by comparison. We see other people succeeding, growing, winning, and we assume it happened quickly. We don't see the years behind it, the effort, the failures, the consistency. We only see the outcome. And that creates pressure. Pressure to move faster, to get results sooner, to skip the process. But the process is where everything happens. There's a powerful idea reflected across the reference materials. Consistency over time is what creates real results, even when those results are not immediately visible. That's the truth. Because growth is not always obvious. It happens quietly, gradually, below the surface, until one day it becomes visible. But only if you stayed consistent long enough to reach that point. Now here's where patience becomes powerful. Because patience allows you to trust the process, to stay focused, to keep building, even when it feels slow. It allows you to avoid distractions, to ignore shortcuts, to resist the temptation, to constantly switch paths. And that's what creates momentum. Because once you stay on one path long enough, your effort starts to compound. Your results start to accelerate, and suddenly, what felt slow becomes unstoppable. Now here's the shift. You stop chasing speed. You start building sustainability. You stop looking for quick wins. You start investing in long-term growth. You stop asking, how fast can I succeed? And you start asking, how long am I willing to stay committed? That question is everything, because your answer determines your outcome. If you're only willing to commit for a short time, you will get short-term results. But if you're willing to stay consistent for years, your results will be exponential. Now ask yourself, honestly, are you patient enough to build something that lasts? Are you willing to keep going, even when it feels slow? Are you willing to trust the process, even when you can't see the results yet? Because that's what separates those who succeed from those who stay stuck. Not effort, not talent, patience. Now, in the next chapter, we're going to bring everything together. We're going to explore how to shift from theory to action, because understanding all of this means nothing if you don't apply it. And once you start applying it, your life will begin to change in ways you never. Chapter 25. You were never meant to stay in the trap. Take a breath. Let everything settle. Because what you've just gone through is not just information. It's a shift. A shift in how you see work, how you see money, how you see yourself, and most importantly, how you see your future. Now here's the truth that brings everything together. You were never meant to stay in the trap, not because you're special, not because you're different, but because the moment you became aware of it, you stepped outside of it. Because awareness is the line. On one side are the people who don't question, who follow the script, who work harder, hoping something will change. And on the other side are the people who see, who think, who choose differently. And once you cross that line, you cannot go back. You can ignore it. You can delay it. You can pretend nothing changed. But deep down, you know. You know that hard work alone is not enough. You know that effort without direction is a loop. You know that time is your most valuable asset. You know that leverage is the real game. You know that your identity shapes your outcomes. You know that your thinking determines your path. You know that discipline, focus, and patience are tools, not destinations. And now, you know what to do. Not everything, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to start, enough to move, enough to build. Now here's the most important part, because this is where everything becomes real. You have a choice, not a big dramatic choice, a quiet one, a daily one, to continue as you were, or to move differently, to stay in the loop, or to step outside of it, to react or to create, to trade time or to build leverage. And that choice is yours every single day. Now let me speak to you directly. Not as a voice in your headphones, but as a reflection of what you already know. You don't need permission. You don't need validation. You don't need to wait. You already have everything you need to begin right now with what you have, where you are. Because the truth is, you don't escape the trap all at once. You escape it decision by decision, habit by habit, action by action, until one day you realize something has changed. You think differently, you move differently, you build differently, and your life reflects that. Now here's the final line I want you to remember, the one that stays with you, the one that anchors everything you've heard. Hard work will build your survival, but only strategy will build your freedom. Let that sink in, because that is the difference. That is the shift. That is the line between where you are and where you can go. Now, before we close, I want you to do something simple. Not for me, for yourself. Think of one idea, one insight, one moment from this audiobook that hit you the hardest, the one that made you pause, the one that made you think, the one that stayed with you, and commit to it. Write it down. Say it out loud. Share it. Because when you do, you turn passive listening into active intention. And if this journey resonated with you, if it challenged you, if it shifted something inside you, then stay consistent with that feeling. Don't let it fade, because most people feel inspired and then go back to the same patterns. But you don't have to. You can build on this. You can move forward. You can create something different. And if you're ready to keep going, to keep learning, to keep building, then stay connected to this path, not just for motivation, but for accountability. Because this is not a one-time realization. This is a new way of living, a new way of thinking, a new way of building your life. Now here's the final truth. You don't become free when everything is perfect. You become free when you take control. And that moment can start right now, not tomorrow, not someday, now. Because the trap was never permanent. It was just invisible. And now you see it. And once you see it, you can walk out one step at a time.